Following 12 weeks of protests over Israel's proposed judicial reforms, Benjamin Netanyahu has delayed voting on the bills in order to negotiate a consensus.
When there is an opportunity to avoid civil war through dialogue, I, as Prime Minister, am taking a timeout for dialogue.
One shouldn't forget that Mr. Netanyahu had previously signalled a willingness to compromise, but leading right-wing voices in his coalition government threatened to withdraw support if he did so. Then came the firing of the country's defence minister, Yoav Gallant, who'd warned that the reforms were jeopardising military cohesion and national security.
He is fired? Dismissed like this? What are we, a banana republic? What is this?
There followed resignations and calls from some in the coalition for a delay and negotiation with the opposition. In the meantime, street protests and threat of a strike by the National Labour Union Federation compounded the sense that the government was careening towards a crisis.
We have to come out and demonstrate, because it's the end. It's really the end.
From a national responsibility, from the will to avoid the rift within the people, I decided to give time to get a broad consensus to pass the legislation.
Yes, the pause is a setback for those who wanted maximalist reforms, especially giving power to the legislature to overrule any decision by the Supreme Court. But that still leaves plenty of room for negotiations over other reforms, such as imposing some political balance to the Supreme Court's power to choose its own members. Mr. Netanyahu and his coalition ran and won the election on the issue of judicial reform, even if not on every detail that was eventually proposed.
They're patriotic Israelis. They want the good of the country. But a lot of them don't actually know the details of the bills.
The resort to protest in the streets is troubling enough in a democracy, but Israel faces growing threats from its enemies abroad, especially Iran, and from Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza and the West Bank. Israel is a raucous democracy, which is to its credit, but it needs a consensus on core governing principles to survive in a brutal neighbourhood.